Okay, great. Welcome to our newest trustees and welcome to the 196th meeting of the Audit Committee of the Metropolitan St. Sewer District. Can we get a roll call, please, Tim?
Yes, we will note that all trustees are present.
And a motion for approval of the minutes from the 195th meeting.
So move. So move.
All right, that's a motion and a second. The minutes are approved. I have no comments today, so let's move to internal audit.
All right, great. Thank you, Trustee Fair. We've got one presentation today. This is a review of the service desk function. We've got Todd Loretta from MSD Internal Audit here, and it's Bill. We may have somebody from Brown Smith Wallace joining us. We're expecting Bill Gogol, but Todd can handle the presentation if we don't get Bill.
Well, good morning, everyone. For our new trustees, hey, welcome. I wanted to give you, this engagement is performed because it's a part of our annual audit plan that we have every year. So we're in the process of developing a new audit plan. We'll have that for you probably in June, just in one of the June meetings. So this audit is a result, something that's in our audit plan. That's why we did it. So just wanted to set that out there for you guys. Can we move on to page 1 of the presentation? The district's IT department has a separate service delivery division that administers and operates the service desk. It used to be known as the help desk. The purpose of the service desk is to assist system user or customers with any type of IT-related questions, requests, and issues related to the district business and network. Now, personnel across the district from various sites utilize this business network. We got personnel here at Market. We've got seven different treatment plants. There's 3 yards, there's a couple of garages, and there's 3 pump station facilities. Personnel at all those sites are using this business network. So the service desk needs to be available to all that personnel. The last time I looked at this area was back in 2014. We were going to look at it a little earlier, but IT was implementing a new system and they made some reorganizational changes, and we wanted to make sure the time was right. And they actually wanted us to look at this area, but we wanted to make sure the time was right. One important thing you should note that any request incidents related to the plant pump station systems, that is handled by a completely different team. That's handled by the district's operations systems team. They have some third-party service providers that help them. When I say the plant pump station system, what I'm referring to is the systems that actually control the operation of the plant and the pump stations, which is a completely different network from the business network. It's a much smaller network. The business network is the large network. And if you look on page 2, you can see a little diagram. It's a high-level diagram. I don't want to get too much detail, but you can see how the 2 networks are separated. The business network being a much more complex and larger network. It is the network that faces the internet. So the service desk is, their focus is on that business network. And their points of methods of contact include a self-service online portal. It's called a TSP. You can access that any time you're on the system. You can contact them by phone. You can contact them by email. You can just walk over to their offices. They have offices at Market, Suffolk, Grand Glaze, and Bissell. Any questions there? Now, page 3. Regardless of contact point, any request or ticket is going to be entered into that TSP. It is a cloud-hosted application called Easy Vista. This was implemented in September 2019, so it's a fairly new system. It replaced our older PMO and heat ticket systems. We had basically 2 systems handling this whole area. They were kind of antiquated at this point. This new system is a single consolidated system. It's more robust. It's a better system from my own personal experience. If you move on to page 4, you'll see the log on our home screen for the TSP system. You can see on the left, a red box, something is broken. That's when if you have an issue, your laptop's crashing, you're locked out, you need a new password, some software's not working for you. That would have been previously handled by our heat ticket system. Now, the blue box, something I need. That would have been handled by our old PMO system. That's where you really need a manager approval for something. You maybe requesting a new laptop, or we're adding an employee, or we're terminating an employee. That's usually involves those types of things. So up in the right-hand corner, you can see there's a current activity box. That's where the employee, or the customer, or the user can go and check the progress and status of their requests. It gives them pretty good visibility, see what steps are being taken. So move down to the bottom, you can see the service desk consists of 11 employees, which includes a service delivery manager, a service desk supervisor. They oversee the daily operations of the division. They report to the assistant director of IT and ultimately report to the director of IT. Any questions on that? Now, as far as the scope on page 5, the scope of this engagement consisted of a review of the administrative process and controls around this service desk function. Now, the audit period for transactions and data covered a 6-month period of July 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2020. When I say transactions and data, what I mean is closed tickets, the closed tickets for that period. We had about 4,200 closed tickets during that period, which is about about 700 per month. So it's a fairly large amount of tickets. And then also open tickets. We had 800 open tickets at the data fieldwork. So the majority of fieldwork was completed remotely during the month of February 2021. Page 6, objectives. As far as the overall objectives of our audit, there were to, first of all, make sure that service desk function and process controls are adequately designed and implemented. Now, specifically, we wanted to make sure the organizational structure was adequate, alignment, staffing, reporting structures, and so forth. The policies and procedures were adequately documented, including guidance on service delivery commitments, guidance on standard procedures for common tasks. They have workflow standard processes that are documented, workflows that basically support an end-to-end customer experience. In other words, cradle to grave, covers everything from beginning to end, so forth. Want to make sure the overall service delivery and offerings are adequate. In other words, is there adequate coverage and accessibility? As I mentioned earlier, this needs to be accessible to all the employees, all the system users across the district. They need to be adequate access points. Is there a user-friendly interface for customers, which I think they do have that now. It's much more user-friendly. Visibility for the customer, they need to be able to see the status of their requests, what kind of steps are being taken. That always helps the customers, customers. So if you go on to page 7, as far as objectives, this is probably where the rubber hits the road. This is probably the more important area. We want to make sure the tickets are adequately tracked, reported, and documented. We'll make sure they're tracking the ticket incidents, tracking the tickets for timelines and completion. Make sure there's target resolution time for monitoring mechanisms. We did have a recommendation around that area. You can see there's listed there. Also want to make sure the documentation of the root cause, there is documentation of the root cause and documentation of the solution within the ticket. Those are important in that for future tickets, it helps the technicians come back and review those tickets for a reference. Also want to make sure access is appropriate and secure, appropriate based on job duties, and elevated privileges are adequately separated and secure. We had an issue there as well, so.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
What, on the this KPI, elevated privileges and adequately separated and secure, what is that? I'm sort of confused as to why you have those.
Oh, well, we want to make sure their access to those systems is appropriate based on what their role is. And elevated privileges would be privileges where you have administrative privileges in the system. We have privileges that are above, like somebody like I normally use, like myself, so they can do more things in the system.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later. We have a recommendation about it. So on page 8, as far as approach to methodology, how do we perform the audit? The team, in addition to their existing knowledge, leveraged control framework guidance that was contained in what they call COBIT 5. That stands for Control Outcomes for Information Technologies. That is a framework that deals with this area, among other things. It's one of the areas it deals with. And there was a second set, there's another framework, ITIL 4, it's IT Infrastructure Library. Again, another framework of best practices. That one's actually published out of the UK. It's an internationally accepted framework that covers this kind of work. We did request and obtain documents and reports addressing policies, organizational structure, process flows and procedures for specific types of transaction and system user access. So we obtained all those reports and documents. If you move on to page 9, we did review that documentation attained above. We performed walkthrough and a lot of interview procedures with the service desk personnel. We did it mostly through Teams. There's a lot of back and forth, having them explain how things work, showing us system screens and so forth. We did access Easy Vista. I have access to it, and I was able to show through the team some screenshots and so forth. But the service desk personnel also helped us with that. They were able to provide some system screens and show us how the system worked. We did obtain reports of closed tickets for the scope period and a report of open tickets as of the February field work. Now, for the closed tickets, we were looking for the timeliness of the resolution, the use of target resolution times, the documentation of the root cause, the documentation of the resulting solution. Now, again, both those are very useful for future tickets and identifying trends. And if you're seeing the same root cause over and over again, maybe just something we need to address at the root cause level. Now, for the open tickets, we're looking at the aging, the days elapsed since each ticket was originally opened, and the days elapsed since the last update in the system for a particular ticket. So if you want to move on to page 10, as far as results and the overall assessment, we had generally satisfactory opinion. Now, for the newer trustees, what we have 3 overall opinions or assessments, basically for each report: satisfactory, generally satisfactory, and unsatisfactory. In the report, there's a whole page that goes in great detail of exactly what those mean, but I'm not going to go over that right now. We did identify 4 opportunities for improvement. Now, the first 2 kind of go together, as I mentioned, open unresolved tickets and ticket resolution times. And when you aggregate those 2 items together, we felt they were significant enough to prevent us from issuing a complete opinion. That's why we have a general satisfactory opinion. The third item has to do with the completeness of the ticket documentation. Again, that's the root cause and solution documentation. And then the fourth item is around credentials for the elevated system access. And that kind of lines up with what I mentioned in the objective section. So with that, I'm going to go over the actual recommendations and the opportunities for improvement. Move on to page 11. The first item, again, has to do with the open tickets. Now, of the 801 open tickets, 359 had been open more than 90 days after the initial ticket creation date. Of the 801, 247 had not been updated and reviewed in the system for more than 90 days since the last ticket, last ticket update and review. Excuse me. So what we're recommending is they implement a process in which the tickets beyond 90 days, or a more formal process, I should say, because they do have a dashboard that they use. They are monitoring these tickets, but I think it needs to be more of a formal process. And we recommend they, kind of take it a step further and further leverage that dashboard that already exists in the system. I think they just need to take a step further and make a more of an effort to close these tickets a little more timely. Any questions on that? Item 2 on page 12.
Todd, quick question.
Yes, sir.
On the resolution side of this, is the help desk or the service desk responsible, involved in the resolution totally, or do they hand it off? And where is the problem?
No, they normally solve the issue, yes. I mean, they might get some help from another portion of IT.
Okay, but it stays under the purview of the service desk.
Yes, it does, yes. Yeah, go ahead.
That's not entirely true. So the help desk certainly has its scope of responsibility, and they'll try and resolve those tickets immediately. But there are certain tickets then get assigned to different staff within the organization. So the tickets can be assigned to anybody within IT. If it's a technical issue, it goes to the technical service division. That's beyond what the scope of the help desk can do. So then that's certainly some of the reason these tickets are still
That's
open.
what I was wondering. It
Yeah.
looks like the help desk takes the hit,
Right, yeah, I guess.
even though the problem has been elevated and is being handled properly. It's
Right.
taking a
I guess I'm kind of misunderstood. Yes, they're responsible for controlling the ticket within the system, but they're not necessarily controlling with the fix. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, they would monitor what's going on, monitor the progress, but they're not actively
Right.
working the problem.
Right.
Correct. Once they hand it off, then it's the responsibility who it's assigned to and their manager or supervisor.
Okay.
So the audit was more restricted to the service desk function than the problem resolution.
Correct. Yes, that's correct. Okay, let's see. So we're on page 12.
All right.
No, you're fine. This is that ticket resolution times. This is kind of related to the first item. The service desk does have an established initial set of target completion times for different types of tickets. Each ticket does receive a classification along the target completion date. The issue that we found is there's no real monitoring or enforcement of the actual times versus the target dates, kind of getting back to what we just talked about. So we're recommending they continue their efforts to implement a more mature set of target times, and along with that, with some formal monitoring and some actual enforcement mechanisms in place to try to, again, you want to close those tickets as efficiently as possible. So if the infrastructure is there, I think you just need to kind of take it a step further. So on page 13, completeness of incident ticket documentation. So again, here we're talking about root cause and solution notes. This is strictly around documentation within the ticket. Of the 4,200 tickets closed during the scope period, 750 did not include a root cause in the system documentation. By policy, the root cause is required. Now, regarding the solution notes, often these were not adequately completed. There was not enough information to really determine how the solution was arrived at. Again, these are very important for future tickets. They're very helpful as for guidance and reference, especially the root cause. If you're seeing the same root cause, there may be something we address there globally. So we recommended on page 14 that IT implements a hard control within the TSP system that will require a root cause to be documented before the system will allow a ticket to be closed. And then also establish some minimum requirements for documenting the solution notes. I think this will help the technicians in the future. Any questions on that? And the last item on page 15 is around the credentials that we talked about a little while ago, about the elevator system access. Now, to address the issues for the tickets, some of the technicians do require what they call elevated access to the systems or administrative privileges. Now, they definitely need this access. We're not questioning that at all. They definitely need this access. But what we ideally like to see that elevated access require the use of a second and separate set of credentials. Currently, their normal log on through Active Directory includes that access with their first log on. So what we'll recommend is that there be a second and separate set of credentials for each technician that needs that access. Just to add, it's an added layer of security. So any questions on that? I guess I should mention that IT is on board with all these recommendations. Again, I think some of the infrastructure are already there. None of these are reinvent the wheel type of items. They should have all this completed sometime during this calendar year. So I think they're in fairly good shape. So any questions?
All right, it doesn't look like there are any questions, Trustee Fair, so I think that concludes the presentation.
Okay, thank you. And the next meeting is tentatively scheduled for May 4th, 2021. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
The meeting concluded. Thank you.
Chairman Evans, we're ready when you are.
I believe trustees Wabi and Fair are away from their desk. We could wait a minute for them to get back.
Whenever you're ready.
I'm here.
We'll call to order the 216th meeting of the Program Manager Committee. I'd ask for a roll call.
All right, we will note all trustees are present. Thank you.
Ask the trustees to review the meeting minutes from March 2nd, 2021, and get a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, next item is the Engineering Department agenda items.
Good morning, trustees. Just a quick introduction. I'm Rich Underfirth. I'm the Director of Engineering. I will bring, at the Program Management Committee meeting, I'll generally bring everything that you will see from the Capital Improvement Program at your regular board meeting a week from Thursday. So we'll cover each one of those items in detail. There's a detail sheet that provides all the specifics of the project. I'll go through that briefly. I won't cover every piece of it. And I'll answer any questions you have. That way you get all the information prior to having to vote on it. So I'm going to cover those items today. Stop me. There's quite a few items, so if you have any questions, just let me know. I will provide some brief explanations on some items ahead of time to kind of educate you a little bit as to what I'm covering. The first three items, and you can follow along. I think Brian's. Okay.
So we'll just keep putting those when he's done with that.
Thank you. Yeah, let me know if you lose place. I can get you caught up.
You can go to, keep going a little further. Okay, that's the first one, and when he's done with that page through, you'll see the next one looks just like that. There you go, Rick.
All right. The first three items that you're going to see today, and generally you'll see these first during my presentation, are green infrastructure grant proposals. The district made a commitment as part of the consent decree and to commit to $120 million spending for green infrastructure to reduce overflows in the combined sewer area, which basically is the city and the near county. That was our commitment. That reduces overflows by the construction of green infrastructure such as rain gardens, pervious pavement, things like that. So when the district started the program, obviously the district will build some of this green infrastructure, but we don't own a lot of property. But we have built some of this ourselves. We're actually doing a project that's on the adoption agenda. We're doing some green infrastructure here at the market facility, but we don't have enough properties and wherewithal to be able to build all that 120 million. So what we do is we offer grants. There are 3 forms of grants. We have large grants. These are generally institutions. We will partner with street department and parks and things like that. And actually one of the grants today is from Forest Park. So they'll apply for a grant from us to help us build green infrastructure, and we get the benefit of the reduced overflow. In other words, we'll pay for the project, it reduces the overflow, and it benefits us for the consent decree. We have a development grant, so you get development that's happening throughout the city and the near county and the combined sewer area, where the developer isn't necessarily required to put in green infrastructure, but by the way of his project, he's putting in a parking lot and he has the ability to put in a green infrastructure. We'll offer grants to allow them to build that green infrastructure. The third piece of the program is a small grant program. That's something that is administered for us through Missouri Botanical Garden. This offers $4,000 grants to individual property owners that may want to put in downspout, may put in rain barrels. Couldn't think of rain barrels. Or build a rain garden in their backyard, take their gutter downspouts, and maybe it's causing a problem. They can build a rain garden that makes that problem go away. So we offer that grant through the Missouri Botanical Garden. Been a very successful program for the district. As far as the funding for these grants, we bring that to you annually. That's already been done for this fiscal year. And what I do at that time is I'll provide the statistics, kind of give you an idea. We offered this many grants. The district spent this much money. We did this many small grants to kind of give statistics. But, you know, over the life of the consent decree, so we're looking at somewhere between $5 and $7 million a year for these grants. So these will be the next 3 projects. What I'll do is I'll review each one, who the grant's going to, and there's a sketch that kind of shows where the project is. Questions before I move on? All right. First one is the CSO volume reduction green infrastructure for Intersex Arts Center. This authorizes the staff to enter into agreement with Fresh Coast Capital to provide financial assistance through the Green Infrastructure Grant Program. The purpose of the project, again, is to reduce combined sewer overflows to the Mississippi River per the long-term control plan and the consent decree. This project will reduce runoff with the installation of 2 bioretention basins. The total cost of the project is estimated at $400,000, and Fresh Coast Capital is requesting that $400,000 grant reimbursement. In your packet, there is a map showing where this is located. This particular project is located in South City near the Jefferson and South Broadway area. And you can see in the middle of the page there, the outline of the overall property where this work's taking place. And the 2 dark green boxes, they're running their flows, their surface flows from their parking lots and their buildings to those rain gardens. It holds it there, allows the water to evaporate or soak in, and then eventually will overflow to the combined sewer system. That's really what the whole program's about, is holding that water back, getting it to the ground, let it evaporate, and then we have less overflow to our system. The next grant is for the Forest Park Waterways project. This authorizes staff to enter into agreement with Forest Park Forever, provide financial assistance through the Green Infrastructure Grant Program. The purpose of this project is to reduce combined sewer overflows to river to pair for the long-term control plan. This project will reduce runoff with the installation of 2 bioretention basins and the modification of the interconnected lake system with weir walls, which will allow those lakes during rain events to hold more water. And I'll explain that a little bit when we get to the thing, to the map. But the purpose of the total cost of the project is $1,214,000, and that's the request for the grant is for that amount. So if you go to the drawings provided, if there's a map, a base map that provides the lake connected systems, and to kind of get your bearings here, just to the right of the project area is the Barnes Jewish complex. So it's right just west of Kings Highway, north of Highway 40. There's a lake systems. I think the Steinberg is down in this area. Right now, in order to keep those lakes fresh, the city of St. Louis actually puts in clean water all the time. And in addition to rain that occurs. And that water from these lakes, once these lakes get to level, it overflows into the sewer system. So it's actually going to the district's combined sewer system. So what they're doing as part of this project is they're going to be putting less water, which is less water that could be opportune for overflowing. And again, during rain event, and allow these lakes to capture more water during those rain events. In addition to that, you can see there's 2 bioretention basins that they're building. In other words, there's some surface water that comes down and it probably comes off the street. They run it through a bioretention basin. And again, what those green infrastructure do will capture, you know, impurities in the water, and it cleans the water before it goes into the lake. So there's kind of a lot of benefit to this particular project. This is probably one of the larger ones we've done. We've been talking to Forest Park Forever for a long time about this project, and they have some other projects in the park. And again, they all benefit us because everything from these lakes goes to our combined sewer system, and during a rain event, the less water we're getting from public water obviously will not be overflowing then. Any questions on that one? All right, the next item is Green Infrastructure Grant for McCree Avenue 4565 through 4591. It authorizes the staff to enter into agreement with Green Street McCree investors to provide financial assistance to the Green Infrastructure Grant Program. The purpose of this project is to reduce combined sewer overflows to the river to pair. The project will reduce runoff with the installation of 1 bioretention basin. The total cost of this is estimated at $333,000, and Green Street is requesting $333,000 reimbursement. In the location map, this particular project is in the Botanical Heights area near Vandevetter and Kings Highway. It's a redevelopment of an area, and a lot of times we'll find in redevelopment, what I call midtown areas, they're going in, and if you drive by, you'll see this humongous big parking lot that nobody uses anymore. And when they go in and redevelop and they pull that pavement up, and then they take the opportunity then to run the dark brown there is the building, then they can run their downspouts to there rather than directly to the sewer. So again, benefits the combined sewer system. So that's the type of project that we're offering grants to. It's a program used all over the United States, and we have a real good program going. So if you ever have any questions on it, I've got staff that manages most of these grants. She's actually on the call, Kalina Menke. So I'd be happy to get you in touch with her if you have any questions. All right. Now moving on, this next set is all construction. I think the next 10 items, and I'll run through these pretty quick. These are the projects that we've designed and have bid out, and now we're going to construction with them. First project is the Baylon City Shed Mitigation. This appropriates additional funds for an ongoing construction project being built by J.H. Barra. Some of our larger projects, we will fund over multiple years. And when I come and ask for additional funds, it's funds that we have in our budget that we started a project last year we didn't appropriate all the dollars, we're just appropriating part of it, and then I'm coming back for the rest of the dollars this year. So that's what you'll see referred to as supplemental funding. The work to be done, that's being done on this project consists of the construction of 4 detention basins, a 50-acre and 5 rain gardens, and approximately 4,000 feet of storm sewers varying of 12 to 60 inches in diameter. The purpose of the project is to reduce building backups and to alleviate wet weather surcharge and overlying flooding in the combined sewer system in the Baylon watershed in North St. Louis City in the Bissell watershed. This is a Parcel funding request. This is a planned supplemental appropriation of $3,150,000. It'll bring the total appropriation for this project to $9,150,000 and fully fund the construction of this project. Supplemental appropriation is $150,000 above the funding presented from the original project ordinance. This additional funding is due to utility conflicts that have been more than originally anticipated. There was significant coordination with the city water company Inspire, and there's been more conflicts. When you start putting large sewers in the streets in St. Louis, there's a lot of other utilities there, so it's not uncommon to have those utility conflicts with the project. In addition, we've had some security issues with dumping in this area, so we've had to add some security fencing to the project to try to keep that from happening. Basically, it'll be an ordinance for a supplemental appropriation of $3,150,000. The next item is the Infrastructure Repair Rehabilitation Contract B, appropriates funds and authorize staff to enter a construction contract. The work to be done consists of construction of approximately 46,000 feet of sanitary sewers, 6-inch to 30-inch in diameter, using the cured in place pipe method. The purpose of this project is to reduce infiltration into and rehabilitate older, damaged, and deteriorated sanitary sewers throughout the district. Sewers identified for rehabilitation are identified through the district's CMOM program, which is our maintenance and operation of the system program. Through our inspections, these projects are identified. The district received 2 bids for this work. The low bid was from SAK Construction. The bid was below our designer's estimate, and our appropriation of $2,150,000 is below the original budget for the project. SAK is committed to 25.08% MBE and WBE on this project. You'll see, I'll always talk about our MBE participation. On this particular project, our rehabilitation projects are funded through loans through the state of Missouri. And the state of Missouri and the federal government have a requirement, or actually a goal, of 10% minority participation. This is subcontractor minority, and 10% women. So they have to at least commit to meeting those goals in order to be awarded the project. On this particular project, they've met those goals of 10% and 10%. The next project is Langley Sanitary Relief. It appropriates funds and authorizes staff to enter a construction contract. The work to be done consists of construction of approximately 1,523 feet of sanitary sewers, 8 to 15-inch in diameter. The purpose of this project is to reduce basement backups and relieve overcharged sanitary sewers. This project will provide for the elimination of 1 sanitary sewer overflow required by the consent decree. The district received 4 bids on this project. The low bid was from Waymar Farms Incorporated. The bid is below the design estimate, and our appropriation of $960,000, which includes contingencies, and $75,000 for utility relocation, is below our original budget of $1,050,000. Waymar Farm has committed to just over 17% MBE participation on the project. And as it's discussed earlier, this is a project being funded with district funds. And the district's goal, that based on our disparity study, is 17% MBE participation from the subcontractors. And that's African-American participation. Next project is Langley and Philo Sanitary Storage. This action appropriates funds and authorizes staff to enter into a construction contract. The work to be done consists of the construction of approximately 400 feet of 84-inch diameter wastewater storage pipes, approximately 310 feet of sanitary sewers, varying in size from 10 to 18 inch, a flow regulation device, and other appurtenances. The purpose of this project is to reduce building backups and relieve overcharged sanitary sewers in the McKenzie Creek watershed. The district received 5 bids for this particular project. The low bid was received from Kelp Contracting Incorporated. The bid is below our design estimate, and our appropriation of $1,350,000 is below the original budget of $1,500,000. Kelp Contracting has met the goal, committing to 17.27% African-American participation on the project. The next item is the Mississippi Floodwall ORS Pump Stations Rehabilitation Project, Phase 2. This action appropriates additional funds, again, planned supplemental funds for this project, for existing project being performed by KCI Construction. The work being done consists of the design and construction of 12 large gate and the rehabilitation of 4 large gates at the Baylon Pump Station, the closure structure and 1 large gate at the Riverview Pump Station, and emergency closure structure and the rehabilitation of 1 large gate in the Riverview collection systems. Again, the purpose of this project is to restore function, improve reliability, and increase operational efficiency of the district's flood wall pump stations. If you're familiar with the flood wall along the Mississippi River, the district has 28 pump stations up and down there. Most of them were built when the flood wall was built. So we're systematically rehabilitating all those pump stations. We started about 2 years ago. It's about, I don't want to say a number because it's not coming to me, but we're working, I think it's about a $35 million project over the life. We've been working, some of these projects have been funded by the Corps of Engineers. We've gotten some funding from them, but we're systematically doing that. And it's going real well, allow us to update those assets. This planned supplementals for $3 million will bring the total appropriation for this project to $10 million and totally fund the project that we're working on. Next project is Tulane Wilbur Outfall Sanitary Sewer Relief Project. This action appropriates funds and authorizes staff to enter into a construction contract. The work to be done consists of the construction of approximately 5,000 feet of sanitary and storm sewers from 10-inch to 27-inch in diameter. The purpose of this project is to reduce building backups and relieve overcharged sanitary sewers. This project will provide for the elimination of 1 constructed sanitary sewer overflow required by the consent decree. The district received 6 bids on this particular project. Fred M. Luth was the low bidder, successful bidder. The bid was below our design estimate. Our appropriation of $2,650,000, which includes approximately $343,000 for utility relocation and contingencies, is below the budget for the project. Fred M. Luth is committed to just slightly over 17% MBE participation on the project, which meets the 17% goal for the project. On this particular project, most of the time our sanitary projects are funded from our sanitary replacement fund and our stormwater from either the district-wide stormwater fund or from an OMCI taxing district. So when we have both sanitary and storm, you'll see there's a split on the appropriation amount for this particular project. The $2,650,000 is split, and $160,000 of that will come from our stormwater fund, allowing us to do some stormwater work while we're doing the sanitary work. The next item is Carl Avenue, Avis Street, and Main Street storm sewer. This appropriates funds and authorizes staff to enter into construction contracts. The work to be done consists of the construction of approximately 502 feet of 12-inch diameter storm sewer, 112 lineal feet of 12-inch sanitary and combined sewers and appurtenances. The purpose of the project is to eliminate structure and yard flooding at 8433 Carl Avenue, as well as flooding at 2 neighboring residences, and to alleviate yard flooding along Main and Avis Streets in the city of Jennings, Missouri. The district received 5 bids on this project. The low bid was from Gershenson Construction. The bid was below our design estimate, and our appropriation of $260,000 is below the original budget of $310,000 for the project. Gershenson Construction is committed to 17.3% African-American MBE percentage on the project, which meets our 17% goal for the project. And finally, the last 3 items I'm going to go over today are requests from staff to the board to allow the district to proceed to condemnation efforts on properties that aren't providing us with easements for a project that needs to be done either for the consent decree or in some cases to assist other neighbors who are flooding. We typically don't come to the board unless we've exhausted all options, and condemnation is typically our last option, or we're not getting response from the property owner. So this will, in most cases, get us going. Just some statistics. We acquire about 350 easements a year, and 90% of those, we're able to negotiate and obtain the easements for our projects. But there's that last 10% that typically we may have to come to you in order to keep the project on schedule, or actually just complete the project in general. To give you some idea, we actually only took 11% of our projects to court last year. And I'm sorry, only 8 of our overall projects that actually went to court, and that's less than 2%. So generally we're able to negotiate. So this is a tool that in most cases just gets them off the schneid and willing to negotiate with us in order to obtain the easements. So we asked for this request, so I'm going to go over those 3. Make sure you ask questions if you have any. The first one is a Cary Court Sanitary and Storm Replacement Project. This ordinance authorized staff to proceed to further condemnation, including filing of all necessary court pleadings and acquisition of permanent temporary construction license for 4 parcels of grounds in the city of Hazelwood. The easement to temporary construction easements are needed to construct a project which consists of construction of approximately 660 feet of 8-inch diameter sanitary sewers and 597 linear feet of storm sewers from 15 to 42-inch in diameter. The purpose of this project is to repair a 12-inch corrugated metal pipe outfall that is separated, and that separation is causing issues with our sanitary sewer, and there's a requiring a slope failure and causing several failures to the sanitary sewer. So it's a critical infrastructure project that we need to make the repairs on. There were a total of 7 easements that we needed for the project. We've required 1 of these, which leaves 6 are remaining. 2 are the city of Hazelwood, and we just haven't completed those. We don't anticipate any problem, which leaves the 4 properties for condemnation. And now I'm going to go to, in your packet, you have a map that kind of shows the different parcels. The yellow that you see there are the easements or the working room that we're requesting from these properties. So in some cases, it can be fairly significant that we're going to disturb. This happens to be adjacent to a creek, so it can be quite disruptive when you start working on creek banks. So I'm going to kind of cover these parcels. Each parcel is numbered. The first parcel 1, which is kind of the upper half of the project, the issue in this particular case, we were having real difficult time getting a hold of the property owner. We were getting no response. He does have the information, but he's not responding. So in this particular case, a lot of times he'll get the condemnation letter and it'll bring him to the table to kind of at least discuss. But right now, we're not sure whether we'd finally go to condemnation on that. Right now, we anticipate he's going to work with us. The next one is Parcel 3, which is the smaller parcel to the right on Cary Court. Obviously, we're taking up a good portion of this person's backyard. This particular property, which we run into in a lot of cases, the house is actually vacant. So we have to search down, try to find who the actual owner is. We need this property in order to access to the rear yard here and take care of this project. We believe the property's in foreclosure, which even makes it more difficult because then we have to work through a bank and a lending agency. Again, our condemnation process may be our only way to get this easement and get this project complete. The next parcel is Parcel 5, which is just up in the upper right-hand corner, again on the property. This is homeowner's an elderly person and wanted the family members to look it over. We're trying to keep the project only because the sanitary sewers were having problems with it. We think we shouldn't anticipate going to condemnation, but we want to keep the process moving forward in case they decide they don't want to give us the easement. And then finally, the final property, which is in parcel number 7 down to the left there. This particular process, the house is vacant again. The property is necessary for the project. Right now, again, the property happens to be in foreclosure. So we're working with the bank in order to keep the project on schedule. And it may be our only way to get the easement would be through the condemnation process. So never easy, but this allows us to keep the project moving forward. Any questions on that one? All right, the next one is the Hampton Creek Sanitary Sewer Project. This ordinance authorized staff to proceed with further condemnation effort, including the filing of all court documents on one parcel of ground in the city of Brentwood. The easement, temporary construction easements are needed to construct this project, which consists of the construction of approximately 324 feet of 72-inch diameter sanitary sewer, including 128 feet of pipe and tunnel. The purpose of this project is to provide sanitary relief to an overcharged sanitary system and provide for the elimination of 2 constructed overflows required by the consent decree. And this is one of the projects I referred to that we have a schedule in order to remove those overflows for our consent decree. And if we are unable to get the easements and the project slips and we are unable to get those overflows out, we're going to have issues with the EPA and as far as meeting our consent decree. So in order to keep this project moving, the district is requesting condemnation. This particular property, we don't believe we are going to have to go to condemnation. We're in conversations. If you go to the map, if you're familiar with Mid-County, this is in the city of Brentwood. Right now, the city of Brentwood has a big project going on along Deer Creek called Brentwood Bound. This is at the intersection of Hanley and Manchester. It's just the northwest intersection. There's a parcel of ground that's been sitting there for about 10 years with nothing going on in that area. We need to go through the right hand the east end of that property next to the Hampton Creek with the new sewer, a new relief sewer. We actually had an agreement. There was a developer that was actually going to give us the easement and actually build it as part of their development. It was a swim school that fell through due to the pandemic. So right now it's gone back to the bank. The bank is owners. And basically they're just trying to make sure that our project isn't going to impact anybody that wants to develop that property. So we think we're going to get it. And in fact, the plan is for the city of Brentwood, as part of their project, to actually build this portion of project for us. And the district would fund it, and that would be a separate action that I would bring to the board members once we reach that agreement with the city of Brentwood. So we anticipate get this one, but if the bank, we don't want it to be held up by the bank. The last project is the Dekamey Drive Storm Sewer. This ordinance authorized staff to enter further condemnation efforts that include all court documents for easement and temporary on 2 parcels of ground in unincorporated South St. Louis County. The easements and temporary easements are needed to construct a project which consists of the construction of approximately 1,000 feet of storm sewers 12 to 24-inch diameter. The purpose of the project is to alleviate basement and backyard flooding along DeCamey Drive in the South County. This particular project, the district, there were a total of, my notes here, total of 11 easements that we were requiring on this project. We just got down to the final 2. We're still negotiating with those 2 properties. You won't see me bring a lot of storm sewers for condemnation, typically because most of the people that are in the area are benefiting from it. In other words, if they don't want to benefit themselves, we generally will not condemn. And so that gets pressure from the neighbors to get them to sign the easements and go ahead and provide that. In this particular case, these 2 owners aren't necessarily benefiting. In other words, the sewer's going through their property, but it's one of their neighbors that's flooding. But we like to keep this going forward. In these 2 particular properties, one of the things we're having difficulty, we're getting no response at all from the neighbors. We've sent multiple letters, visit a site, we can't get anything. A lot of cases it could be rental property, so it's just a matter of tracking down the owners. We'd like to keep the project moving forward so we can get it built this summer and this fall before next fall. So any questions on that particular project? Trustee Evans, that concludes the board agenda items.
Thank you. The next item is the March 11, 2021 public comment follow-up.
Okay, I'm going to cover that again. As you recall, at the March 11th board meeting, the district or the board members received 2 letters, public comment on 2 issues regarding issues with the property owners. The first item, there was a letter from Emily Conley. She's a resident at 780 Wickerly in Fenton, Missouri. She was calling about an erosion issue on a tributary creek called Santa Maria. That's out in Fenton. This is an area where the district has limited funding to address erosion. The district operations department sent an engineer out on that Friday, the day after the board meeting, and met with Mrs. Conley, explained to her what the district was or was not able to do for her. It does appear that she had a small retaining wall that had been washed out. So our staff explained, what maybe she could do to help herself, and I think she's probably going to go that avenue. So at least for the time being and until the district has adequate funding for storm sewer in some of these areas to address critical issues like this, it's kind of the service that we get at this time, is to provide them with our input, suggestions, and obviously if it's an issue that the district should deal with, we'll then move forward with that. But that's what happened on this particular one. Are there any questions? All right, the second item was a letter received from Mr. Donovan Larson on behalf of his neighbor, Mrs. Kilo. It was on a project the district had constructed called Moran Court Storm Improvement. During the construction, the contractor had damaged a private gas line that was serving a couple appliances for the property owner. The district had replaced a portion of the line and reached agreement to do some other things for the property, and we thought we had solved this claim that this property owner had. But she came back and had some other concerns, particularly with the private gas line. And then she had some conversations with Spire as well. When you're dealing with private gas lines and you damage a portion, she had some concerns of leaving the remainder in place. So the district was able to reach an agreement with the property owner on this claim. And this issue should be resolved. All right, that concludes those two items.
Thank you. Next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, May 4th, 2021. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, thank you.
Trustee Fair will let you. Trustee Fair, we're ready to go.
Okay, welcome to the 265th meeting of the Finance Committee of the Metropolitan St. Sewer District. Can we get a roll call, please?
All right, we'll note that all trustees are present.
Do we have a motion for approval of the minutes from March 2nd?
So move.
So moved.
Second.
All right, minutes are approved. Next up is our portfolio review.
All right, the portfolio review. So this is a presentation we do every month per policy. We're going to look at the sheet that looks like this. It's four grids, and it's kind of a review of just our investments and where we stand for the month. So I'll start in the upper left-hand quadrant. So our portfolio is a little over $700 million. That's roughly a $35 million reduction from last month due to timing of cash flows and then also just outflows that have exceeded inflows as we pay for capital projects. We always compare our portfolio to a benchmark. The benchmark is the 1 to 3 year treasury rate. And there's some differences between our portfolio and the benchmark that are so that you'll always see differences here. But right now, as rates have dropped and stayed low, the benchmark is lower than our portfolio's yield to maturity because the benchmark changes over every month entirely. And our portfolio still has some investments that we made months and even more than a year ago when rates are a little bit higher. So as rates fall, our portfolio has a higher yield to maturity than the benchmark, and as they go back up, you'll see ours lag on the way back up. But our yield to maturity is a little over only 0.5%. That's because we invest in very high grade and shorter maturities. We put $55 million to work. So we had about $55 million of maturities, or I'm sorry, of investments mature this month. We put back to work at only 5 basis points, which is 0.05%. Very low rates on the short end of the curve. The WAM means weighted average maturity. So the benchmark is invested all in 1 to 3 year treasury. So they're usually at about a 2 year weighted average maturity. We keep ours shorter since we use funds to pay for projects and operations. So ours is just a little over half a year. But very high quality credits on both sides. Moving to the top right-hand side, sector allocation, this is where we just show you that we're within our policy limit. So this shows compliance with our policy. We have limits on the types of investments we can make, and we're within our policy limits. In the lower left, you always see a fund summary set, tells you a little bit about where our funds are. So the debt reserve funds, the debt project funds, and the SRF operating funds is roughly $200 million of the 700. Those all support the borrowed funds we have to pay capital projects. The operations number there, which is 500 million, that's more of a catch-all, but that is some money that's set aside for capital projects as well as other reserves we use for operating and for other things as well. And so you can see the weighted average maturity and the yield to maturity for each of those kind of sub-portfolios. Then the maturity distribution just shows you our portfolio versus the benchmark. The benchmark's in red, our portfolio is in blue, and again, you can see that our portfolio is much shorter. We've got almost 70% of our funds in that 0 to 6 month bucket. There's not that much reward for going out on the curve. You know, a 3-month treasury right now is 1 basis point. That's 1/100%. If we went to a year, that'd only be 5 basis points. So there's not much benefit for going out very far on the curve right now. So we're keeping things short so that we have liquid assets, and as the interest rate situation evolves, so will our maturities a little bit. Any questions about the portfolio summary? All right, next I'm going to move to the next topic, which is the SRF interest rate adjustment. So we're going to have 2 items at next week's board meeting for you to vote on. And Tammy, I don't think I told you, these are actually going to be intro and adopts.
Okay.
So we'll need to make sure, I'll send you a note, but
Okay.
they're going to, so normally we would introduce something 1 month and then adopt it the next month. We're going to do this all at 1 month just to take advantage of the interest rate that we're being offered so it doesn't have time to change. And what we want to do here is to amend some ordinances that were originally issued back in 2008 and 2013 to lower the interest rate on some of our outstanding state revolving fund debt. And so on this page here, you can see some of the savings that we would achieve by making this amendment. It's about $2.8 million total over the next 14 years of interest rate savings. Relatively modest compared to some of the debt refundings we've done lately, but still a good savings for our ratepayers. The state revolving fund normally is not something we kind of, you know, we borrow from it a lot because it has very low rates. We don't usually see opportunities to have savings here. But we worked with the state actually to identify these. A bank had told us that we could pay off some of these loans. However, that presents a problem potentially for the state and for us because the state relies on the borrowings, the debt that they issue being paid back with interest so that they can lend to more people in the state. And so this fund is used to support clean water initiatives around the whole state of Missouri. We're the largest borrower of this program. And because state's a tax exempt entity and we are, and there's tax exempt funds that support this, if we paid back a large chunk of this money, it would be difficult for the state to put that to work in time to not violate IRS rules, would pose problems for them and potentially the program, and that might make it harder for us to borrow from the program later when we need it. And we plan to continue to borrow from this program. So this is a little bit smaller savings than what a bank had presented to us with a different opportunity, but this works for the state and it works for our continued reliance on this program. So I think it's a win-win actually for everybody. There's 2 detail sheets attached that actually don't have a lot of detail other than just telling you what we're doing, which is again amending ordinances that were adopted previously only to lower the interest rate on these pieces of outstanding debt. Are there any questions on that? All right, if not, I am going to turn the meeting over to Director of Finance, Marion G., and he has got the rest of the items on the agenda.
Good morning, trustees.
Morning.
So the first item that I will be covering is item number 5 on the agenda, which is resolution request to exercise the 4th and last option year with Raftellus Financial Consultants. Raftellus provides rate modeling support for the district. They also assist us when we prepare rate proposals and provide testimony during the rate commission process. In addition, whenever we issue bonds, there's a feasibility study that's required. Raftellus performs and drafts this feasibility study for us. So again, what this resolution would do is to allow us to exercise the last option year with Raftellus. Are there any questions that I can answer? Okay, thank you. I will move on to the next item, which is a general fund transfer resolution. Okay, so this proposed resolution would simply allow us to move budgeted funds from one fund to another fund. We're required to get board approval whenever we're transferring funds in between funds. So this particular resolution would allow us to appropriately classify about $1.3 million worth of stormwater expenses. They would be moved from our general fund to our stormwater fund. Are there any questions that I can answer regarding the resolution?
What's the purpose of moving the funds from, in this instance?
The expenditures actually should be charged to our stormwater business unit in lieu of leaving them in the general fund. So it's really an accounting transaction that we want to make sure we're booking in the appropriate business unit.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, the next item on the agenda is our budget presentation for FY22. So good morning again. We're here today to present our strategic business operating plan and also our preliminary fiscal year 22 budget. If any of the trustees have questions during the presentation, please feel free to stop us and ask any questions. We'll also have time set aside at the end to answer questions as well. If there's additional detailed information that you need, please feel free to contact me. We'll get that information to you, or we could certainly set up a time and I can go over any information that you don't see today. I can be happy to review that with you. So just to kind of go over the agenda for today, we're going to again review the strategic business operating plan. I, along with Rich, will go over the budget. I will be covering primarily the operating budget. Rich will talk to you about the capital budget. Then at the end, I will come back and talk to you about next steps in our budget schedule and entertain any additional questions that you might have. So I will turn it over to Brian, who will talk about the strategic business operating plan.
Thank you, Marion. I'm on page 3 of the presentation. MSD Strategic Business Plan can be found in your preliminary budget document. It's pages 18 through 50. So I'm going to give you a good high-level summary of what's in there and why we do what we do. The charter requires that MSD maintain a rolling 5-year strategic business plan. I don't have a copy of the plan itself. I'm going to go over the high-level details, but it's in the budget document itself. So I'll give you a general description here of what's in there and what we're planning on doing. So the charter requires that we maintain a 5-year rolling plan. It was added to our charter with the 2000 plan amendment initiative that put this requirement in our charter. We developed it in the late summer or early fall of the previous year. So we worked on this about 6 months ago. And then as we do the budget development like we're doing right now, yeah, you guys won't find what I'm saying on this. I apologize. So as we're doing the budget development as we're doing right now, we'll make adjustments to that plan to match up with the budget. With the original budget submittal, all the budget activity, especially what we call our incremental budgets, which are new initiatives, they have to be identified in the strategic business plan before they're ever considered for any kind of activity. You turn on page 4. When you look in the plan, you see that MSD has identified 4 goals that we want to accomplish every year. And in the long term, we want to deliver consistent, high-quality customer service, comply with all legal and regulatory requirements and schedules, minimize the customer rate increases, and be accountable to the St. Louis community. Those are the goals we've had in place, and those have hardly changed at all in the past 20 years since we've had a strategic plan. You turn to the next page, kind of driving one down. Wanting to meet those goals, MSD has developed 6 strategies. The first one is to inform, educate, and partner to build stakeholder understanding. Number 2 is to manage the district's costs and revenues to optimize financial impacts. The third strategy is to integrate and improve the district's business processes. Number 4 is to promote appropriate standards through proactive regulatory and legislative involvement. Strategy 5 is to address customer and regulatory needs through a comprehensive infrastructure management program. And strategy 6 creates a learning and business-oriented culture based on competency and accountability. So in your book from pages 18 to 50, you will find those 6 strategies listed. Now, it drills down much further under each strategy. So for each strategy, you'll find a milestone. That can be 2, I think 5 is the most milestones we have, which are kind of direct activities that will be used to match those strategies. And then under each objective, you will see a list of milestones. And they will be things that we want to accomplish. They'll be listed as year 1 milestones, which would be starting July 30th, year 2 milestones, and then year 3 through 5. And that'll be consistent for every one of the objectives, which are underneath every one of the strategies. The individual departments, sometimes they will take that strategic business plan and they will develop kind of a mini strategic business plan with their own department. There's specific things they want to point out or put them in some of their performance metrics. What I'd ask is to take a look at these strategies. For those of you who have seen this process before, and as of right now, it's only 2 trustees who have gone through this before, take a look at pages 18 through 50. Again, that's 30, if my math's right, that's 32 pages of information, and you'll see a very detailed level accounting of all the activities we want to accomplish over the next 5 years. As we move along, if you have any questions, any comments, please feel free to call me. We will take a look at those. If you have some things you'd like discussed in public because you want to debate or discuss it, on occasion that can lead to us proposing with the board's acquiescence some changes to the business plan. So please take a look at that. Let me know if you have any questions, and we can always make adjustments. You'll find the process, especially with the signing of the consent decree, has gotten rather, redundant's the wrong word, but you'll see some of the same things that we've done in the previous years, since the consent decree is a large part of what the district does right now. So I would offer to look at that. Again, it's in your preliminary budget from pages 18 through 50. Let us know if you have any questions. We can also answer questions. We'll be discussing this topic at the next committee meeting as well. And we'll bring along to that staff any questions we got from the trustees or concerns that we need to bring up and make sure we have a discussion. So
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Preliminary budget was a thick book they received previously, or was email?
Yes, yeah, you received a preliminary budget. There's 2 documents. One is the preliminary budget, and one's a preliminary budget supplement. The supplement's the capital projects that Rich is going to talk about, and the other one just says the preliminary budget. We list a preliminary because it's not complete until we complete our work with you, and invariably there are changes we'll make before we ask you to finally adopt this. So we'll be having a discussion in depth with this, along with any questions. We'll be doing the same thing at the next set of committee meetings prior to the board doing any consideration. So, are there any questions about that? Okay, thank you, Marion. I believe I turn it over to you.
Yeah, so the preliminary budget document for the trustees that were on the board prior to March the 15th, I believe we emailed a link to those documents to you on, I think it was March the 13th. If anyone needs hard copies of the documents, particularly those trustees that are present today, I can run upstairs after this meeting and we would be happy to bring hard copies down to you if you would want one. For the new trustees that just started obviously today, I sent an email to you as well with the links to the document. But again, if you want hard copies, just let me know. I'll be happy to get them for you. So I'm going to spend some time just kind of talking you through some of the key items in the FY22 preliminary budget. So I'm going to go to slide 7. So on slide 7, this slide simply depicts that the district is proposing a balanced budget as directed by our charter, which totals $715.7 million of revenues and expenditures, And these were updated from the numbers that you saw in the preliminary budget book of $715.9 million. We will be discussing the components of each of these items as we go through the budget presentation. So I'll talk to you about the revenues, what comprises those, as well as the expenses here in just a moment. So moving on to slide 8. Just going to discuss briefly the changes that occurred since the preliminary budget book was published. The biggest change involved a business case that related to our Oracle system upgrade project. When the preliminary budget book was prepared, we had budgeted $3.5 million in our FY22 and $2.9 million in FY23 for this particular project. We made a decision that we're going to early adopt an accounting pronouncement, which allows us to move that project to our capital budget. And so we took that out of the operating budget and moved it into the capital budget. There was also a reduction in pension contributions that totaled $1.8 million. So we reduced pension expenses by that amount as well. So going on to slide number 9. So our general fund budget includes $2.2 million, or about a 3% increase for salaries and FICA, excluding the incremental budget items that Brian mentioned, and I'll just talk about here in a moment, of about $800,000. We did have $800,000 that you'll see later on in the presentation that related to incremental budget items tied to our strategic business operating plan. I'll give you some detail here in just a couple of minutes. Items 1C and D, we'll also talk about the increases related to the various items that you'll find in our operating budget. Our total capital budget was approximately $364 million. That included $339 million of wastewater projects and about $19 million of stormwater projects, in addition to the $6.4 million capital project for the Oracle upgrade project that I mentioned a moment ago. Rich will cover the capital program in additional detail here later. The budget also assumes that the district will issue $119 million of additional bonds from our existing bonding authority. As you are aware, there is a ballot item, an item on the ballot for the April 6th ballot that will ask voters to approve or disapprove authorizing the district to have additional bonding authority. The bonds that we're proposing in the budget are not part of that vote, but they are additional bonding authority that we already have. The budget does align with our March 2019 Rate Commission report, and I should have mentioned a moment ago when I was talking about the bonds, the capital program is going to be funded by bonds, but a part of our capital program is cash funded. We call that PAYGO, and we're going to cash fund about $108 million of the capital program. We'll also use some stormwater taxes that we receive, which total about $21 million to fund a portion of the capital program. And then we have $5 million of miscellaneous revenue, which is primarily interest that we earn on investments and some other grant funds that we'll use to fund that capital projects. Moving to slide 10. As I mentioned earlier, the district revenues are projected to total $715.7 million. The largest portion of our revenues are comprised of our wastewater revenues, which is the blue area that's depicted there. We're projecting that wastewater revenues will total about $437 million. The next largest portion is the revenue bonds that I mentioned a moment ago. of $119 million, followed by our stormwater taxes, which are projected to total about $35 million. And then investments and other income are estimated to total about $10.4 million, or about 1% of our revenues. And then finally, we will use our fund balance at about $106 million, or about 15% of our revenue budget. Moving to slide 11. I'll spend just a moment to talk to you about the proposed rate adjustments. This slide shows a comparison of a typical residential customer that's billed at 6 CCFs, and that's about 4,500 gallons of water. So if you compare our FY21 rates for a typical customer at 6 CCFs, it's about $56.40. Under this new budget and new rate proposal, assuming that we get a successful vote on giving us the ability to issue bonds, that rate would increase to about $58.33, which would be about a $1.93 increase, or about a 3.4% rate adjustment. If voters do not give the district the ability to issue bonds, then that rate adjustment would increase by about 15.4%, going from about $56.40 to approximately $65 a month. Okay, moving on to slide 12. So our preliminary district expenses are again projected to be $715.7 million. The largest portion of our expenditures consist of our capital program, about $364 million, or roughly 51% of our budgeted expenses relate to our capital program. The expected wastewater expenditures that are on the slide in light blue comprise about $339 million of that amount, with stormwater consisting of about $19 million. And again, we have that Oracle project, which is depicted in the orange slice of the pie there, at about $6.4 million. The next largest portion of our budget expenses relate to our operating budget. And our operating budget is projected to be about $224 million, or 31% of our total budget. And then finally, debt service, which is the principal and interest payments on our bonds, are projected to be about $127 million, or about 18% of the budget. So I'm going to take a moment to talk to you about some of the significant changes in our general fund budget. And I won't talk about each department, but I'll kind of highlight some of the larger changes that you'll see on this chart and the reasons behind those changes. So our FY22 general fund budget is projected to increase by about $1.2 million, or 0.6% from our FY21 budget. That doesn't include any of the incremental items. When you include the incremental budget requests, those things tied to our strategic business plan, when those are included, the difference is about almost $2 million, or 0.9% increase. So I'll now cover some of the more significant changes in the budget, starting with the Secretary Treasurer's budget. If you'll notice, that budget decreased by about $1.3 million. The reason for that is we budgeted in FY21 $1.5 million that related to Board of Election Commission expenses. Whenever we put items on the ballot, we have to pay both the city and the county our share of the cost related to those items that are appearing on the ballots. So we had budgeted $1.5 million for that in FY21. We will not have anything on the ballot in FY22, so that budget item goes away. Therefore, you see the decline there. That was kind of offset, that decrease was offset by an increase of about $121,000 in personnel services in the Secretary Treasurer's budget. The Executive Director's budget decreased by about $430,000 or 10.6%. These are primarily due to decreases in contracted services and professional services, as well as a decrease in travel expenses. The decreases were offset by a $62,000 increase in personnel services. Human resources, the budget increased by about $437,000 or 4.9%. This change was driven by an increase in vacation accruals of about $419,000. Vacation accruals are budgeted in HR, but the expense is driven by all of the district departments. We just use HR to house that particular budget item. The finance department's budget increased by about $2.5 million or 11.4%. And this increase is primarily due to two items. We increased our budget in our contractual services area by $2.5 million. That increase related to additional collection services of $2.3 million. The collection services are amounts that we pay to law firms and collection agencies to collect delinquent debt. And we pay them a commission in order to collect that delinquent debt. So if you see a budget variance in this particular line item, I know this sounds weird, but that actually means that the district is collecting more cash or getting more revenue in from those delinquent collections, but our expenses are going up because we have to pay a commission on the collection activity that is performed. In addition, we also, as I mentioned, had an increase in bill payment processing of about $500,000. Bill payment processing is simply electronic payments that are processed on our behalf and payments that are also processed at our lockbox. We are seeing more activity. More people are paying via the electronic means. That's a little bit more expensive than our traditional lockbox payments where you simply mail a check in and the lockbox processes those transactions. So we increased that budget to account for the increase that we're seeing in electronic payment activity. Those two items were actually offset by decreases in our capital outlay of $550,000. Our IT department budget decreased by $1.1 million, 6%, due to a reduction of $533,000 in contracted services, which related to professional services that IT utilizes in their processes. There was also a decrease of $312,000 in capital outlay that was for computer and office equipment that we purchased in FY21 that we will not need to purchase in FY22, and a $201,000 deduction in a reduction in temporary help and pension expenses net of salary adjustments. Our operations department budget increased by about $1 million or 0.8%. The largest driver of that increase was $800,000 for machinery and equipment services. These are repairs of things like clarifiers and actuators at our various treatment plants. We also budgeted $511,000 for hauling ash generated during the incineration process at our Bissell and Langley treatment plant. We budget this particular line item every other year. We don't do ash hauling annually. We do it every other year, so we did not budget for this in FY21 because the activity did not occur. So we're budgeting for it in FY22 because this will need to be done. There was also a $180,000 increase in governmental fees due to an increase in assessments from the Howard Bend Levee District, which primarily impacted our Missouri River treatment plant. These increases were offset by reductions in personnel services of $671,000 and also instrumentation repairs of $223,000. And last but not least, I'll just spend a moment talking about the incremental items that Brian and I referenced earlier that are tied to the strategic business plan. There's $475,000 budgeted in HR for increases that related to preventive safety measures. These are contracted law enforcement security to enhance the safety of our crews while they're working out in the field. Also, there's a $314,000 item that was budgeted in IT for data management and cybersecurity improvements. I'm going to move on to slide 14. We did have a net reduction of 9 positions from FY21. We had about 1,026 employees, FTEs budgeted in our FY21 budget. That declined to about 1,017 positions in FY22. So we had 7 positions that were removed from the engineering budget, 3 from the operations budget, and those 10 reductions are offset by 1 increase related to the business case in IT that I just talked about. So I'm going to now turn it over to Rich, who will talk to you about the capital program.
All right, good morning again. I'll be starting on slide 16. Today I'm going to talk to you about the district's fiscal year 22 capital improvement and replacement program. As Marion indicated earlier, it's a totally separate document. You receive 2 documents. One's the budget, the other's referred to as a budget supplement. It says it right there in the middle. Typically runs more of a portrait format. If you would like a copy of this, again, just let Tamara know and she'll make sure you get a hard copy of this. But kind of like my program management meeting, this has the detail of most of those projects that I'll bring you on a monthly basis are in this for the entire fiscal year. So it's a pretty handy document to have. In addition, in the packet that we sent you, the presentation I'm giving today is more of a summary level. We provided more detail. This actually talks about some of the specific projects we have planned in fiscal year 22. It has some pictures and photos of some of the ongoing work. So it's a little more detail than I'm going to provide today. If you have any questions on that, feel free to give me a call or get with Tamara, and then she'll get me and I'll be able to answer any questions. So this is a pretty lengthy document. The detailed is, so we've kind of cut it down, and there's still quite a bit I'm going to talk about because I'm going to take this capital program and kind of slice it and dice it and talk about it in different ways to kind of talk to you about the program. And again, what I'm talking about today, I'll bring to you on a monthly basis. So there's no reason to memorize that book. So I'm going to go to slide 17 now. This is an overall summary of the capital program. If you look at it starting from top to bottom, the district has a total of 143 projects planned for this year, approximately $347 million in new projects for the year. 65 of those are for wastewater design projects and 56 are for wastewater construction. We have 4 new stormwater design projects and then 18 stormwater construction projects. Just directly below that, you see items called wastewater continued and stormwater continued. I'll cover a little more detail. These are projects that we were working on this fiscal year on the construction side that either we didn't finish design or there was delay in the design or we weren't able to obtain easement acquisition. And I'll explain why those were continued. In other words, we'll just move those into fiscal year 22, and we refer to those as continued. And that brings our total program up to 148 projects for $357 million. In addition, we have the $6.4 million that Marion talked about that I'm not presenting on today. that are actually part of the capital program to bring it to a total of $364 million. Moving on, again, part of kind of breaking down, the bulk of the program that you'll see today comes in two major categories. Wastewater program is about 95% of our overall program. It's 121 projects for approximately $330 million. And then 5% of the overall program are for stormwater. That's 22 projects or just under $18 million. So this is pretty close to the split we've seen over the last few years. Again, the bulk of our work is wastewater work to comply with our consent decree. Moving on to the next slide, kind of a breakdown of where the funding goes in the capital program by area. Starting up in the upper left-hand corner, about 20% of our projects that we're doing this year will be work done at our wastewater treatment plants around the district. 4% of the projects are located in the city of St. Louis. 4% we consider district-wide projects. That's our rehabilitation programs for both wastewater and stormwater. 23 of those projects for about $14 million. And then the bulk of the work that's taking place is 72% of the work which is taking place in the county. And there's a reason for that. One of the reasons you see a larger amount of the work in the county is the way we negotiate our consent decree. The requirement was of EPA is that we address our sanitary sewer overflows first before we worked on the combined sewer system to try to reduce those overflows. So in the first 10 years of the consent decree, so which we're getting towards the tail end of that, the bulk of our funding was to remove those over 300 overflows. By 2023, we have to be down to around 30 overflows. So a lot of that work is reducing I&I in the county area, in the separate sewer area, and doing relief projects, which is a lot of the projects that I bring to you. As the program evolves in the next 5 years or so, the work will shift to the more of the city or the combined sewer area with some large tunnel projects that brings the combined sewer overflows, to storage facilities that we're building in those areas. So you'll see that kind of make a shift at that time. Moving on to slide 20, just breaking down where the money comes from that we use for the capital program. Again, the majority of the dollars will come from our sanitary replacement fund. About 90% of the program comes from the sanitary replacement fund. 5% of the program comes from the general fund. These are projects such as our green infrastructure program. Those funding is coming from because it doesn't involve district capital when it's completed. District-wide vendor services that I bring you throughout the year for CCTV inspections and flow monitoring and things like that, and radar rainfall projects. The remaining projects are funded from our stormwater funds and from our OMCI taxing districts. That accommodates about 2% from the OMCI funds and 3% from our overall stormwater fund for repairs and replacement in the stormwater program. The next item, we talked about what we call OMCI funds. Those are taxing sub-districts that were set up originally in the district. I think we could probably do almost a day on the origin and how these have evolved over time. But last year, the board had agreed there's a total of 12 of these sub-districts that are active right now. We went out to the public last year to determine who had an interest once we lost our stormwater rate in 2019 of turning these back on to generate some funds for stormwater. We had positive feedback from 5 of these areas. So our board last year agreed to turn these back on, and they start generating revenue, and we're starting to do stormwater projects in specific areas where this funding is generated. The overall, they generated about $8.2 million, these 5 OMCIs, and as part of turning them back on, one of the agreements we reached with the municipalities and the folks within those sub-districts is we created a grant program. Our program is totally driven by the highest priority, most cost-effective projects. That isn't always the case in a municipality. They have specific issues that they'd like to address that don't necessarily meet our priorities to address flooding and erosion. So by making some of these funds, which they generate within their area, available to them for grants, then they're able to do some of the work that they proposing to do with these grant fundings. Now the grants, any grant that they're requesting out of the OMCI that are over $50,000, I will bring to you, similar to the Green Infrastructure Grant, to let you know that they've requested those dollars. Here's the work that they're proposing to do, and the district authorizing the funding of that. So that's something, prior board kind of initiated it, and you guys will be implementing a good portion of that program. Slide 22, we always do a breakdown of the overall program. Everybody wants to know, what's actually going in the ground versus all the work that's required to get it to that point. When the district started the consent decree, obviously we were looking at close to a $5 billion program. You estimate how much of that's going to be engineering, how much of it's going to be construction. A good round number typically for design to construction, including construction management service, is about 20% on the design side, 80% for construction. We started the program because it was so large. Obviously, there was a lot of design and planning work that was still taking place early in the program. To give you some idea, in 2013, about 31% of the overall capital improvement program was for design service, and about 70% was for construction. That number has slowly gone down because we've got more projects designed, designing larger projects, and this is the lowest it's been in 10 years. The program, 14% of the program, or 69 appropriations for 49 million of the overall program, and construction is 86%. From here on out in the program, that should be pretty steady. A lot of the work on some of the larger projects has started, so this number is going to stay pretty consistent. But as you look as a benchmark to other programs, this is a fairly good number for engineering to construction. The continued project, we discussed that earlier. We had 5 projects that we weren't able to complete this year. I'm not going to go through them each specifically, but there were 3 of those were wastewater projects. And I talked earlier, we have some of the larger wastewater projects that we do. Sometimes we split the funding over the year, and if we don't need the funding this year, we'll wait and, in other words, only ask for the funding when we need it. Or there's a project that's being done that a project has to wait for that one to be done to start the second one. The 3 projects we had in wastewater fell into that construction phasing. In other words, we either didn't need the money yet from the board appropriations to finish the job, or we're waiting for another project to be completed in order to do the next phase. So we don't want to ever ask for the money early. Tim can keep that in the bank, and we only come to you when we need those dollars. On the stormwater side, there are 2 projects that we have, and what we run into there, it's coordination with others. The project, one of the projects is municipality is actually doing the job, and they weren't ready for the funding yet. And the other project, we're working on a utility coordination on that particular project. So this is considering we're doing close to 100, 80 to 100 projects a year. So this is a good year, and it's quite possible that some of these can get done before the final, just in the next several months. That would lower, and we could be adding jobs to this. And we'll cover that next month when we get to the final budget, any changes in what these numbers look like. Next item, one of the things we started doing when we started the consent decree is Sometimes you have projects that aren't going to make it, those 5 I just talked about. Well, that leaves money in the fiscal year 21 capital improvement budget. But we have projects that we're designing right now that could be ready to go, ready to be built. And those are projects where if you look at the schedule, they're not quite ready for fiscal year 21. We'll put them in fiscal year 22. In this particular case, what we like to do is identify projects that if there is funding available and it's ready to go, we have all the easements ready to go to construction to resolve an issue, whether it be stormwater or wastewater, we identify projects in that upcoming fiscal year 23 that we could move forward. And they show up in this book. In other words, because it requires them to have a public hearing for us to be able to bring that project to you. So we go ahead and identify that. Years ago, when I was in planning, we didn't do that. So at the end of the year, if we didn't get a job done, then it just moved to the next year. So this gives us an opportunity to try to get projects done in a timely manner. So it's a good thing. This year, we've identified 21 projects for a total of about $213 million that could come forward. The funding could come forward if that money's available. 12 of those are wastewater, 4 are stormwater, and then 5 of those where I talked about sometimes we don't need the money till the following year. Well, if a project is going good, particularly some of our larger tunneling, if the tunneling's going faster than we had anticipated, then that allows us to bring that money forward and keep the project moving. So that's what we're doing there. And again, there's details of the specific projects in this book and in the detailed presentation that I provided you. Just another breakdown of kind of the types of projects that we're doing this next year, primarily on the wastewater side. We break them down into project types. And again, in the detailed presentation, it'll give a definition of what these project types are. So again, 143 projects. The bulk of the projects, or 59 of those projects, are sanitary sewer overflows. I told you we had a good portion of the projects in the first 10 years of the program were to eliminate those sanitary sewer overflows. We're at that peak right now. We have more sanitary relief projects going than we have during the entire program. And then the rest break down kind of asset management, renewal. A definition of that is basically the repair and the replacement of our assets out there, both the pipe assets and at our treatment plants. So a bulk of those 15 projects will be special projects. Keep in mind, we have 7 wastewater treatment plants. We have over 250 pump stations out there. We work to rehabilitate those over time. So we have projects in the system. We always have 3 or 4 projects going. We're rehabilitating a pump station that's reached the end of its useful life. So that's what an asset management renewal project is. Again, more detailed, I'm not going to go any further on that, but kind of gives you an idea of what types of project our money is going to. That really concludes what I have today. Are there any questions before I turn it back over to Marion? And again, feel free to get all of Tamara or call me directly, email me directly if you see something and say, hey, what is this? What are we doing here? I got a question about this project and that, and I'll fill you in.
Thank you, Rich. I'm just going to wrap us up by talking about the next steps in the budgeting process. So next slide, please. So on slide 28, we, of course, have presented our strategic business operating plan and our preliminary budget to you this morning. We will publish in the newspapers a notice of a public hearing, which is required for our tax rates as well as our budget. That public hearing is scheduled after the May 13th board meeting. Prior to that, though, during the next Finance Committee meeting, if there are any questions or if we make changes to the budget, we typically are reviewing budgets right up until the time that we introduce the budget to the board. So if we make any changes, we will review that with you during the finance committee meeting. And certainly if you have questions, we will take questions at that committee meeting or in the interim if you have any prior to that time. We do anticipate introducing the budget at the May 13th trustee meeting. As I mentioned earlier, we will have a public hearing at 6 o'clock that evening to deal with our taxes associated with the budget as well as the budget itself. And then in June, at the June 10th Board of Trustees meeting, we will request board approval to adopt the budget. So if there are any questions about the schedule or the process itself that's remaining? Okay, if not, that concludes the presentation. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to Rich, myself, or through Tamara, and we'd be happy to provide you with whatever information you may need. Thank you for your time this morning.
Yeah, this is Brian. Just one thing. So the process you've seen in presenting the budget has been developed in cooperation with the trustees in the past. What's the right level of information versus the information we're distributing? We're cognizant of the fact, again, that we've got 4 trustees who have been here less than a year, some less than a month, and only 2 that have gone through this process. So while we go through this, please, we really want you to ask us questions. We'll go through this process. As we get through this year, it's a good time with the changeover in board members. Do we need to make what we did here today look somewhat different? After we go through the process, we'll have that discussion with you. We'd like to get through 1 year of this. And the way this really works is please ask us questions. If you see something you think is wrong and we need to talk about it in public, let us know. And we'll provide that explanation. So please give us as much feedback as you feel is necessary that you're comfortable with the final product.
Great. Thank you, Brian. And Jen, Brett. There's some feedback. You don't hear me?
No, I'm sorry, you were cutting out.
I'm not sure what.
We don't hear.
And then I was just thanking you all for the detailed presentation. I know it's a lot of work and analysis, and I appreciate the high-level explanation. The next meeting is tentatively scheduled for May 4th. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
All right, the meeting is concluded. Thank you.
Trustees that are not here online.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, staff, and I'd like to welcome the new board members.
Thank you.
Welcome, and looks like they made you hit the ground running. But roll call, please. Thank you.
Is it on?
Can I get approval, a motion to approve the minutes of the previous stakeholder relations committee meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Move, approve, meetings, I'm sorry, the minutes are approved. Okay, we'll open the business part of the meeting with Bert Berthold, his semi-annual operations compliance update.
Thank you, Trustee Wilson. For the new trustees, my name's Brett Berthold. I'm the Director of Operations. I take care of the treatment plants, the collection system maintenance yards, pump station group, and some of the support services that support us in our effort out there. I get the opportunity twice a year to come before you and talk about some of our regulatory compliance metrics. And that's what I have here today in the presentation that should be in front of you. If you'll turn to page 2, what I'm going to go over today briefly is some of our treatment plant compliance and how we've done with regards to our permits that we operate under. I'm also going to talk about some of our customer service and how we respond to the calls that we get from our ratepayers, along with going over some of our other collection system metrics and those items. And like the presenters before, if anybody has any questions, please stop me. Happy to answer any questions. And if I use an acronym that you don't understand, please stop me. It's not intentional. But with that, we'll get going. If we'll go to slide 3. What we have here is a snapshot of how we've done over the last 6 months and the 6-month periods previous with regards to our treatment plants and all of the regulatory requirements that we have to report. Our permits require us to test and report on things like total suspended solids, the biological oxygen demand, the pH, some of the metals, those types of things. And we do this on a daily basis. The treatment plant operators collect all the samples and in coordination with a group that reports up through Rich's department, the Department of Environmental Compliance, their lab there takes all these samples and analyzes them. So if you look at the chart on the very right-hand side under 2020 S2 for the period of August through December, we had a total of 1 violation out of 1,207 tests that we did. I can tell you Bissell was very disappointed in that. It was a small operational issue with regards to a 24-hour sampler that we've since remedied by updating our maintenance program for it. But we had almost a perfect year with all of our treatment plants. And this is the closest since I've been here that we've come to a perfect year. So the treatment plants did a fantastic job. I just want to give them a lot of credit, as well as the folks that work at our laboratory that does all the analysis. If you look at the far right column, NACWA awards. NACWA is the National Association of Clean Water Agencies, which we are a member of. And they submit, we submit each year for awards. And you'll see the awards listed there for the different treatment plants. Bissell received a silver, so if you have 1 to 5 violations a year, you get a silver award. If you're perfect for the year, you get a gold award. And if you're perfect for 5 years in a row, you start earning platinum awards. And you'll see 4 out of the 7 plants have received a platinum award, and actually the Waterways plant has had perfect compliance for 6 years, the Fenton plant for 13 years, the Merrimack plant for 13 years, and the Missouri River treatment plant has had perfect compliance for 7 straight years. So really good work by everybody involved there. If you'll turn to slide number 4. This is a graph that depicts our on-time response when we receive calls from our customers through our customer care group. This is when people are having issues, either a water backup call, they might have a blocked inlet, there might be sewage on the ground for some reason. They call us up and we track that and track our response time. And our goal is to have greater than 90% response time in under a 4-hour window. And on a day like today, we're usually in the very high 90% range. You know, it's a dry day out. We don't have many calls. What heavily impacts us here is when we have large rain events. For example, we just had a larger rain event up in North St. Louis County in the Florissant area. Had over 500 phone calls, and we cannot respond to all those calls within the 4-hour period, and that really hurts us. You'll see in the graph here for 2020 on the right-hand side, for the second semester from August to December, it was 84% response time. We were heavily impacted by a rain event that occurred in August of last year and everything, and that's what drove our numbers down. If we move on to slide number 5, one of the metrics that we track is how many maintenance-related building backups occur. Our goal is to have less than 420 annually. It's based on the number of accounts. One of the kind of national metrics that we go by is to have less than 1 per 1,000 accounts. And so you'll see for the second half of 2020, we had 109 building backups for that time period, which was well below our goal of 210 for the 6-month period. If we move on to slide number 6, we also have a maintenance-related goal with regards to overflows. This is a goal that's set based on the miles of pipe that we have in the ground. This is one of my harder metrics to achieve, but we had a reasonably good 2020 second half. Think of these as if a manhole is overflowing or if a pipe is broken and sewage is flowing on the ground or something. That's what these types of goals zero in on. If we move on to slide number 7, we also track as part of what, as part of our response and issues in the system is when we have issues that are capacity related. And that means a pipe was receiving more flow than it could handle. Basically, you need to think of these as what takes place during rain events. And what you'll see here is for the, on the right-hand side, in 2020, we had 536 for that 6-month period. We also, as kind of a comparison, we like to track the rainfall. And you'll see there that for that 6-month period, we had about 24 inches of rain. That was pretty average. But you'll ask yourself, well, why is the graph so high? So one event, one rain event, one very intense rain event caused about 410 of those overcharges. And otherwise, it was a very mild 6-month period, except for that one rain event. If we move on to slide number 8, several of the other presentations today have briefly mentioned our constructed sanitary sewer overflows. We track those and the removal of those. Currently, we have 73 still installed in our system. Just from a historical perspective, we used to have hundreds and hundreds. I think, I've seen numbers of 600 or 700, and we've systematically worked at eliminating those through all the construction projects that Rich's group designs and implements, and then ultimately turns over to my department to operate. Just a couple notes. By the end of 2023, I believe we're supposed to be down to 34 of those, and all of them are supposed to be eliminated by 2033. And that's the schedule of projects that we have. If we turn on to slide number 9, we monitor our sanitary sewer overflows, and we have devices on them that tell us when they activate in rain events. And so we track that and how big and how long the activation was. And just want to report that even though we have 73 overflows in the system, only 49 of those activated during the last 6-month period. So even though it does rain, it may not be an intense enough rain to cause the overflow to activate, and as you can see here, only 49 out of 73 activated. And if we turn to slide 10, the last slide, it's just kind of a summary. Shows you how we've been doing past years and kind of how we wrapped up 2020. So if you look at the plant compliance, wasn't perfect. Perfect is our goal. We had 1 violation, but overall had a very, very good year there. Our customer response overall for the year was 85%. It can be better. It just really depends on the intensity of the rain events. And unfortunately, over the past few years, that seems to be more the norm than the abnormal. We seem to get very intense storms that dump a lot of rain. With regards to our maintenance-related backups, 0.7 there for the total year. Very good year. We continue to implement our CMOM program, which is our maintenance program for the collection system, and it's paying results. And then for our overflows, we had 2.8 for the year. The second half was much better than the first half of the year, and we continue to work on that. Just as a reference for that metric, it used to be in the high 6s, 7s, and 8s. And when John Sprague was previous operations director and we started implementing things, we really brought that down the curve. And now we're kind of bouncing around the level that it's really been hard to drive this down. Although we work on it every day, we put extra cleaning routines in, we investigate all the issues that we have out there to see if there's something that's going on from a maintenance aspect that we can improve things to drive the number down. And with that, that's the end of my presentation, Trustee Wilson. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Berkel.
Okay, thank you.
The next item is our semi-annual diversity report. Ms. Shauna Paradis.
Good morning. Thank you. Good morning and welcome, trustees, and welcome to our new trustees. I am Shauna Paradis, Manager of Diversity Programs. I manage the diversity strategic initiatives for the district, and twice a year, like Brett, I come to you with a semi-annual report, and again in the fall, we'll give an annual report of our entire fiscal year and what occurred during that year in our diversity areas. So today I'm going to be giving you our semi-annual report. Today's semi-annual report, according to our agenda, contains information about our CIRP, our capital construction, utilization, and the workforce, along with the design and workforce utilization with our design projects, our small infrastructure program, and the diversity programs, and an update on our disparity study that we currently have underway. So we'll get started. First, with the capital construction utilization program. In capital construction, 31 projects were awarded during the period worth $50.8 million. 28 were non-building sewer construction projects with subcontract goals of 17% MBE African American participation, and 3 were state-funded projects with the state of Missouri goals of 10% MBE and 10% WBE participation on those projects. Also, all of the project awards during this period did meet the diversity goals that have been set on our programs as a result of our 2012 disparity study that was conducted. And I'll talk more about the disparity study later on in the presentation. So from the $50.8 million in project awards, 21.54% was committed to MBE and WBE construction firms worth $10.9 million. Right below that, you'll see that the MBEs received $6.8 million, 13.5%, and WBEs received $4 million, or 8% of the commitments that were made during that period. At the bottom of the slide, in terms of payments made on active construction projects, MSD paid out $119.5 million, with $29 million, or 24.45% of the total payments going to MBEs and WBEs on our active projects during that time period. 16.8%, or $20 million, was paid to minority-owned firms, and 9.1 million, or 7.67%, went to women-owned construction firms. Next, let's take a look at our construction workforce participation. So first on the left on this slide are our workforce goals for construction projects that were also set by the disparity study. On building and non-building construction projects, the goals are 30% minority, 7% women, and 40% of boots on the ground apprentice training that should be performed by minority and women on the project. Now, these construction project goals are on projects that exceed $500,000. We follow goals established by the state of Missouri for our state SRF-funded projects, and those workforce goals are 14.7% minority and 6.9% women. Now, on the right of the slide is a breakdown of the boots on the ground work hours performed on 102 active projects. These are our construction projects that fall within our 30% and minority and 7% women goals. At the bottom, you'll see that on the state-funded projects, 83,840 hours were worked on 24 state-funded construction projects. And on this next slide, we'll break this out for you. So overall, MSD's diversity workforce program applies the goals set by the disparity study. This slide shows that in applying construction goals of 30% minority and 7% women across the entire program for a total hours worked of 378,627 hours, minorities represented 28.8% and women represented 7.47% of the total 126 projects that's accounted for in the total number of hours worked. Additionally, all of the apprentice trained on MSD construction projects on these active projects accounted for 64.84% of the total training hours and were performed by minorities and women. Next, I'm going to cover our design. utilization. So we had, during that period, 5 project awards worth $5 million. In the area of design, 63.4% of commitments made on those 5 projects went to MBE and WBE firms. Now, what we see here is a trend that there are more prime contractors being awarded in the professional services contracts. So out of those 5 awards, there was 1 Hispanic company and there was 1 African-American company that were awarded those contracts and will perform as prime contractors. And there are no goals on professional services as a result of our disparity study. So with payments, 42.56 in payments on professional services contracts were made to diverse companies that totaled $6.7 million. MBEs received $5 million or 32.29%, while WBEs received $1.6 million or 10% of project funds during the first half of our fiscal year that we're currently in. If you take a look on the left, in terms of local office workforce for design projects over $500,000 for professional services, where we have goals of 18% minority and 32% women, we've maintained pretty consistent numbers with 17.3% minorities and 36.88% women representing the local office workforce in our area currently. In the small contractor program, it offers opportunities for minority and women contractors to perform MSD work as primes in our capital program. Projects can be awarded up to $50,000, and there are no bonding requirements on these prime contractors that perform work in this program. This is a program that allows small contractors with limited experience in sewer industry work to establish a foundation to gain valuable sewer industry experience and increase their qualifications. And this gives them the ability to grow their capacity and eventually be able to compete as pre-qualified contractors on more complex sewer work. So for the first half of fiscal year 21, in terms of dollars spent, the total program spend was $2.7 million, with $834,000 or 30% of total program dollars going to MWBEs. There's been a total of 218 projects, with 65 or 30% that were performed by MWBEs. And you'll also see that the percentage of spend on sanitary projects is 34%, and our storm projects in the program had 36% participation. Next is information having to do with MSD's Community Benefits Agreement. Just to give you a little bit of background information, MSD entered into an agreement with the signatories you see listed here in December 2013. This agreement will last for the duration of MSD's consent decree. The agreement speaks to MSD's commitment and connection to the community we serve. Through this agreement, MSD has invested in programs that will ensure that diversity and inclusion principles are supported and equitable for everyone who participates with MSD work. To the right of the slide is the most current list of programs and initiatives that's been initiated or are currently being discussed with the signatories that you see listed here. Now, due to the pandemic, we did not have any meetings with the CBA signatories during the time frame period that I'm currently reporting on. However, our next scheduled meeting with the signatories is scheduled in about a month. So you'll see a report of that meeting in my annual report that I'll give in the fall. What I do want to cover in this next slide is information on the initiatives that we have going currently with the signatories of the CBA agreement. So through a competitive process for a workforce development grant job training program, MSD selected the Building Union Diversity Program for the grant award, better known as BUD, the BUD program. This BUD was awarded a grant to provide a training gateway for women, minorities, and economically disadvantaged adult and high school students to provide those participants in the program with an introduction into the construction trades that have a particular focus on employment in sewer construction. This program is also used on MSD contracts to provide MSD contractors who are falling short of meeting workforce diversity goals with available minorities and women who are interested in working on MSD projects. Program goals for BUD program includes concentrated outreach efforts within distressed communities, enrollment and training of adults and high school juniors and seniors, programming for mentoring, job recruitment, and employment retention. Next slide. Other CBA initiatives include education and internships. What we are trying to accomplish here is to educate the communities about MSD. We're going into schools and we want to begin to teach youth about what MSD does so that we can encourage youth and participate with them as well as participate with adults. Last summer, despite the pandemic, MSD was able to sponsor 3 high school interns with 8-week paid internships. The students came to MSD from the St. Louis Internship Program, who is now a partner with the Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater St. Louis. The internship workforce program is offered to all area high schools in the city and county of St. Louis, both public and private and charter schools. And we've had tremendous success here at MSD with this program for the past 6 years. We've even seen these interns progress from high school through college, and in some cases, they return as college interns as well. So we want to see through their mentorship program, see them graduate and become gainfully employed. Another phenomenal program is the SIUE Environmental Resource Training Center for Treatment Plant Operators program. We have employees that are currently working in MSD's treatment plants who are products of this program. MSD last year sponsored 2 full-ride scholarships in the current school year for the SIUE program, and we are currently recruiting to provide an additional 2 scholarships in the upcoming school year for eligible minorities and women that are interested in pursuing careers as treatment plant operators. So last summer, I just want to point out that we do participate in internships as well with this SIUE program to provide internships in our own treatment plants for participants of this program. And lastly, here, I want to give you an update of the timeline for completing the update on MSD's disparity study that was conducted in 2012. At the time the board accepted the 2012 disparity study, we told the board that we would, after 5 years of implementing the results from that disparity study, that we would conduct an update as to obtain what analysis of what we've done in that 5-year period to eliminate any disparities that existed as a result of the original disparity study. So the 5-year period that the current disparity study update is covering is the next 5-year period. And so the schedule that you see here is the schedule that we're currently working to. And so we anticipate having results by the beginning of our fiscal year that starts on July 1st of 2021. In terms of next steps, we will be presenting the results of the disparity study update to the board first, and then we'll begin a campaign to communicate those results to the public. We'll receive comments from the public, and then we'll devise an implementation plan as to what results are going to be adopted into MSD's diversity program to implement the results from the next disparity study. And that concludes my report, my semi-annual report. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
If no one else has any, I have two.
Okay.
The first one, and then they should be fairly quick. The female minorities counted twice
In
in both
workforce,
categories.
yes, for workforce,
Okay, or workforce and contract and that sort of.
only workforce.
Okay, so they're only females are counted as females, not minorities, or minorities. Which is the priority when you're looking at contract awards and
When we're looking at contract awards, they are counted as what in the area that they submitted their bid.
okay.
Either minority or women, they can't do
They
both
can't
for,
do
not
both.
both for contracting.
Got it. And the second relates to your intern and scholarship program. How do you recruit what are your recruiting tools, techniques, partners, that sort of thing? When you're talking SIU, is it strictly through SIU or is it?
The certification program is through SIUE, and the recruitment component is handled through HR. So as we participate in outreach activities, we are also recruiting for interested people who would like to participate in the SIUE program. We also, we post the information on our websites, There's a number of activities that we participate in at the high school level. If you have any graduating seniors who are interested in the SIUE program, we have a partnership with them to recruit those interested graduating high school seniors. And there are other areas that we participate in with that outreach effort that HR does.
Thank you.
I think one other thing on the operators, we're very conscious of how we're doing it. I think you'll find throughout these programs, it's a discussion we have. We don't want to just train people. We also want to employ them. So Shauna is working with Brett to make sure whatever we put into these cycles, we want to be able to absorb those individuals as long as they pass through the program and they're ready to go. So Shauna is working with Brett on that to make sure we don't over or under award scholarships in any given year.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, if there are no other questions, we'll move on to the next item, and the next two agenda items will be covered by Ms. Tracy Coleman. How are you today, Tracy?
I'm doing great, thank you. Good morning to all of the trustees, but welcome to our newer trustees. I'm Tracy Coleman, I'm the Director of Human Resources. The first thing I want to talk about is Resolution 3656. This is a resolution for our employee benefit consulting services, which is currently provided by Gallagher Benefit Services. The professional consulting services, the districts, they help us with our medical plan, our dental plan, our accidental death and dismemberment, our legal plan, and our long-term disability. And Gallagher has done a really good job for us in the past years and has continued to do a really good job in terms of keeping rates and get low and getting us the most competitive bids for the work that we have at the district. The first year of the contract with Gallagher Benefit Services will expire June 30th, 2021. And we utilize them for our comprehensive benefit consulting services. This resolution will authorize MSD to exercise its option to renew the current contract for a second one-year term at the same annual fee, which is at a cost of $46,000. This resolution will exercise year 2 of the 3 option years we have available. What questions might you have about the employee benefit consulting services we have with Gallagher? If there are no questions, I'll move on to the next resolution. The next resolution is Resolution 3657. This is the third-party claims administration services, which is currently provided by Thomas McGee, LC. HR leverages the TPA services of Thomas McGee for water backup, workers' compensation, general liability, auto, errors and omission, and any other claim against the district trustees or the district staff. This is at a cost of $624,000. This contract that we have provides the administration for all those claims just mentioned, and this resolution will allow us to enter into year 3 of a 5-year contract with Thomas McGee, LC, with the contract beginning on July 1st of 2021. The original contract allowed for an initial 1-year contract with 4 additional option years. The original proposal included a price increase at the second year for the final year options. Are there any questions about this particular contract or the renewal of this with Thomas McGee? Okay. Well, the last thing that I have is an ordinance. It is ordinance number 15658. This ordinance is for a classification plan. We are requesting to update classifications to reflect the removal of obsolete positions and the retitling of existing positions. And I just want to note that the positions that we're deleting, there was no employees that were lost from those positions. These are people who just moved into titles that were more modern, where we could probably advertise a little bit better and get people with a newer job title. The removed positions are as follows: Engineering Division Inspector just for environmental compliance was removed. The Industrial Waste Investigator, the Permit Supervisor, and the Quality Control Chemist titles were removed from the classification plan. What has been retitled is the Accounts Receivable Manager is now the Billings and Collections Manager. The Accounts Receivable Supervisor is now the Billings and Collections Supervisor. For the Operations Department, the Operations Supervisor, SCADA, has now going to be titled SCADA Administrator Supervisor. And for Human Resources, the Safety Supervisor will now be the Security Supervisor. Are there any questions about these changes mentioned for the classification plan? If there are no questions, trustees, thank you for your time.
I'd like to thank the staff for the presentations today. Our next meeting is scheduled for May the 4th. I will entertain a motion for dismissal if no one has anything for the good of the body. Or for it.
So moved.
Second.
There we go.
Okay. Thank you. As I've said before, and it continues to be the pleasure of my life. Have a good day. The meeting is.
Thank you, trustees.